I'd been with Jerry Morgan for 4 years when everything fell apart. It was supposed to be a beautiful day. We were at the Highland Park Country Club in Dallas, the kind of place Jerry had always wanted to impress his colleagues with. My cousin Sarah asked me about my bloodshot eyes, and I explained honestly I'd thrown up so violently that morning that the blood vessels burst. Before I could even finish, Jerry stood up from his chair, red-faced and loud enough for the whole room to hear. "God, Megan, shut up! Nobody wants to hear about your bloody eyes or vomit. Can you just be pregnant without making it everyone's problem? It's revolting." The room went dead silent. His own sister, Amanda, tried to calm him, but Jerry doubled down. "What? I'm supposed to pretend this isn't gross? Yesterday she told me her nipples were leaking. Last week it was about discharge and cellulite. Enough already." His mother, Linda Morgan, gasped. "Jerry, she's carrying your child." Jerry sneered. "That doesn't mean I need to hear every disgusting detail. This is supposed to be a happy day. She's making me lose my appetite." I set down my ginger ale, looked him in the eye, and said calmly, "You're absolutely right, Jerry. I won't disgust you with another update." He blinked, stunned for a second, then smirked with relief. "Finally, thank you, see? Not that hard to keep it private." That was the moment something inside me snapped. From then on, he didn't get another word about my pregnancy. 2 days after the baby shower, I was buttoning up my jeans for my 20-week anatomy scan when Jerry knocked on the bedroom door. "What time's the appointment?" "I'll drive," he said, jangling his car keys. "Oh, I'm going alone," I replied, slipping on my flats. "What do you mean alone? We find out the gender today." "Yeah," I said, pulling my hair into a ponytail. "And that involves a technician pressing a wand covered in gel all over my stomach while we stare at our baby's private parts on a screen." "You said pregnancy details revolt you. I don't want to subject you to that." His face twisted, like he couldn't decide if he was angry or embarrassed. "That's different." "No," I said firmly. "It's not. You wanted pregnancy updates off limits. I'm respecting that." I called an Uber and left. When Jerry eventually showed up at the clinic, I told the receptionist not to let him back. He sat in the waiting room while I learned we were having a boy. The next morning, his mother, Linda, called him in tears. "You're having a son, Jerry, a perfectly healthy little boy, and you better have apologized to Megan already." Jerry stormed into our bedroom afterward. "You told me the doctor said we'd have to wait another few weeks to know. I said that because I didn't want to disgust you with the details," I replied. "It's what you asked for." Over the next weeks, I shared baby names with everyone except him. Sarah knew we were considering James. My mom liked Thomas. His brother suggested William. Jerry cornered me in the kitchen one night. "Why won't you tell me what names you're thinking about?" "Because discussing the baby requires mentioning pregnancy," I reminded him. "And you said that was off limits." "This is insane." "No," I shot back. "It's literally what you demanded." He didn't say another word. Just sulked, like a kid who lost a toy. But for the first time in 4 years, I felt a kind of control I'd never had with Jerry. He'd set the rules and now he was choking on them. By 28 weeks, things started going downhill fast. My feet swelled so badly that when I pressed a finger into them, the indent stayed like memory foam. Dark spots danced across my vision. Something in my gut told me this wasn't normal. So I called an Uber and went alone to Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. After a round of tests, the doctor walked in with a serious look. "Megan, you have preeclampsia. We need to admit you for monitoring." I texted my mom, my cousin Sarah, Jerry's mom Linda, everyone except Jerry. He only found out when his brother Matt called him asking why he wasn't at the hospital. He came storming into my room later, face pale. "You're in the hospital and didn't tell me? Medical details about pregnancy are TMI, remember?" I said flatly. "You said so yourself. You could lose the baby, Megan." "And if I told you that," I said, staring him down, "you'd call it disgusting. You'd stress me out until I did lose him." Jerry didn't answer. He just sat in the corner, quiet for once, while the monitors beeped. When the doctor scheduled a C-section for 36 weeks, I told everyone else. Not Jerry. His sister Amanda was the one who finally broke it to him over dinner. Jerry called me frantic. Tuesday? You're having our son on Tuesday? Yep, I said, casually flipping through a magazine. Didn't want to disgust you with talk about them cutting through my stomach layers and pulling a baby out of my uterus. His mom tried to mediate, begging him to apologize. He swore he didn't mean birth, just the gross little details. But I wasn't budging. The morning of my C-section, I quietly packed my bag, called another Uber, and left while Jerry was in the shower. At 7 a.m., yes, while nurses prepped me for anesthesia, I finally texted him, "Having the baby now." Don't want to disgust you with details, so talk later. When I woke up from surgery, the first thing I saw wasn't my son. It was Jerry, standing in the corner, eyes wild. "You didn't tell me you were leaving," he snapped. "That's the problem," I whispered through a dry throat. "I just had our son. Woke up from life-threatening surgery, and the first thing out of your mouth is about you." His face went white. He muttered something I couldn't catch, and then, just like that, he walked out. The door shut behind him. I lay in that hospital bed, alone with the machines, wondering if I'd just become a single mom for real. When I woke up again, Jerry was gone. No note, no explanation, just an empty chair and the soft beep of the monitors. 20 minutes later, a nurse wheeled in a clear bassinet. Inside was my son, wrapped in a striped blue and white blanket, face scrunched like an old man. She carefully placed him in my arms. For the first time, I held him. His fingers were so tiny, grasping at nothing, his little body warm against mine. My phone buzzed on the tray. It was Linda, Jerry's mom. Her voice shook over the line. "Megan, why is Jerry at my house sobbing like a child? What happened?" I told her the truth, that her son walked out right after I woke up from surgery. The line went silent. Finally, she said, "I'm coming to the hospital." An hour later, there was a knock on my door. But it wasn't Linda. A woman with a clipboard stepped inside, introducing herself as Emily Rodriguez, a hospital social worker. She pulled up a chair and spoke softly. "Megan, the nurses told me a bit about what's been going on. I'd like to ask you some questions. Do you feel safe at home? Do you have support with the baby?" I felt the tears start before I could stop them. I told her everything, from the baby shower at Highland Park Country Club where Jerry called me disgusting, to him storming out of the hospital room minutes after I gave birth. Emily took notes and nodded with a kind of steady patience. "Emotional abuse during pregnancy is serious," she said. "We need to make sure you and your baby have proper support. You won't be discharged without confirming safe housing." That's when Linda arrived. She walked in, saw her grandson in my arms, and started crying. She touched his hand gently before looking at me, face full of shame. "Jerry told me everything. I'm disgusted with my own son. But please don't cut me out. I want to be part of his life no matter what happens with Jerry." I nodded and placed the baby in her arms. She held him close, rocking him with a quiet reverence. Emily, the social worker, jotted something down. "This," she said softly, "is exactly the kind of support system you'll need." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of relief. Not because of Jerry, but because his family, at least, seemed to understand. 2 days later, discharge day arrived. My C-section incision still burned with every movement, and I could barely sit up without help. The nurse went over my paperwork and then called security upstairs. Jerry was in the lobby with flowers, trying to come up. "He's not on your approved visitor list," she told me gently. "Do you want him to come in?" "No." My voice came out sharper than I expected. "I don't." She nodded. 10 minutes later, the flowers arrived at my bedside with a folded note. I shoved it into my bag without opening it. Jerry's sister, Amanda, came to pick me up. She loaded the diaper bag and car seat into her SUV while I shuffled slowly behind her. I sat in the back with my son, watching the Dallas skyline pass by through the window, numb to everything except his small breaths. Walking into our house in Oak Cliff felt strange, like I was trespassing in someone else's life. The nursery Jerry and I had painted together still smelled faintly of fresh paint and baby powder, but it didn't feel like ours anymore. Amanda stayed in the guest room, helping me up the stairs, making meals, and running laundry. She was the one who held my arm when I hobbled to the bathroom. She was the one who rocked the baby at 3 a.m. while I tried to pump through tears, my chest hard and burning. 3 nights in, Linda showed up with an overnight bag and insisted on handling the middle of the night feeding. She washed bottles, folded onesies, and never mentioned Jerry unless I asked. "This isn't about him," she said one night, laying my son gently back into his bassinet. "It's about making sure you and this baby are okay." Meanwhile, Jerry blew up my phone with texts. First apologies, then anger, then more apologies. "Please let me see him. Please let me help. I'll only stay a minute. I'm his father. You can't keep him from me." The nurse had shown me how to set my phone to do not disturb except for emergencies. I used it often. My stress levels already spiked every time the phone buzzed. At the baby's first pediatric appointment, Amanda drove us. The waiting room was packed with crying infants, frazzled parents, and the smell of disinfectant. When the doctor asked about family medical history, I realized I couldn't keep Jerry out entirely. I texted him a single line. "Send me your family's health history." Within 5 minutes, he sent back paragraphs. Allergies, conditions, everything. Then, of course, the offer. "Let me come to the next appointment. Please." I didn't answer. For now, I had Amanda and Linda, and that was enough. By the time my son was 6 weeks old, Jerry had finally stopped bombarding me with non-stop texts. Instead, his messages shifted into proof. Screenshots of therapy appointments, receipts from a parenting class at SMU's Community Outreach Center, notes from an anger management counselor. I ignored most of it until a letter from the Dallas County Family Mediation Services showed up in my mailbox. Jerry had filed for partial custody. My stomach dropped. Linda sat across from me at the kitchen table as I opened the envelope. "He's trying to show he's serious," she said softly. "But Megan, you don't have to agree to anything unsafe." A week later, we sat in a bland government building with gray carpet and buzzing fluorescent lights. The mediator, a woman named Karen with rimless glasses and a calm voice, looked between us. "Jerry," she began, "I see you've enrolled in therapy and parenting classes. That's a good step. But trust has been damaged here. Right now, Megan has sole custody. We need to discuss what realistic visitation looks like." Jerry leaned forward, his hands clenched together. "I know I screwed up. I was cruel. I thought I was being funny or tough, but I wasn't. I don't want to lose my son over my stupidity." I stared at him cold. It wasn't stupidity. It was abuse. You mocked me for being pregnant. You walked out after my surgery. You made me feel like my body was disgusting for carrying your child. The mediator cut in, her voice even. "Megan, what are you comfortable with?" I took a deep breath. "Supervised visits. At the family center. Once a week. If he wants a relationship with his son, he has to earn it. And not in my house." Jerry's face fell, but he nodded. "I'll take it." Karen scribbled notes. "Okay, we'll draft a temporary agreement for supervised visitation. Jerry, if you continue therapy and classes, we can revisit this later." As we left, Jerry caught up with me in the parking lot. "Megan, I know I don't deserve it yet, but thank you for at least giving me a chance." I buckled my son into his car seat without looking up. "This isn't about you, Jerry. It's about him. Don't thank me. Thank him for existing." For the first time, he didn't argue. He just nodded and walked away, shoulders hunched like a boy who'd finally been told the truth. The first supervised visit was at the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center. The room looked like a daycare. Plastic chairs, bright murals of cartoon animals, a few shelves of toys. A staff member sat in the corner with a clipboard ready to record everything. I carried my son in on my hip, his tiny fists clutching my sweater. Jerry was already sitting at the little table, hands folded, looking like he'd been rehearsing for hours. When he saw us, he stood too quickly, nearly knocking over his chair. "Hey, buddy," he whispered, voice shaking. "I'm your dad." The staff member nodded at me. "You can hand the baby over when you're ready." My stomach clenched. Every nerve screamed, "Don't do it." But I forced my hands to move, slowly lowering my son into Jerry's arms. Jerry held him stiffly at first, like he was afraid of breaking him. Then the baby squirmed and let out a small cry. Jerry panicked, looking at me. "What do I do?" The supervisor intervened. "Bounce him gently. Babies this age like rhythm." Jerry followed the instruction, awkward at first, then smoother as the baby's cries turned into soft whimpers. Jerry's eyes brimmed. "He's so small," he said under his breath. I didn't think he'd be this real. For an hour, Jerry fed him, burped him, tried to make him smile. The supervisor made notes, occasionally offering pointers. I sat in the corner, arms crossed, watching every move. Afterward, in the parking lot, Jerry approached me. "Thank you for letting me do that." I cut him off. "Don't thank me. This is the bare minimum of being a father." Week after week, the visits continued. Slowly, Jerry became less clumsy, learning how to change diapers, how to soothe him, how to recognize the difference between a hunger cry and a tired cry. He even started showing up early, waiting in the lobby with a baby book under his arm. Meanwhile, Linda and Amanda stayed my backbone at home. Linda drove us to every appointment. Amanda sat with me on nights when I cried from exhaustion, bottle in one hand, phone in the other. At the baby's 2-month checkup, the pediatrician weighed him, measured his head, and checked his reflexes. "He's thriving," she said, smiling. I nodded, relieved. But inside, I knew the truth. He was thriving because of the women who showed up when Jerry didn't, because of the boundaries I refused to let slip. The visits were progress, yes, but forgiveness. That was still far away. By the time my son was 3 months old, the routine had settled in. Supervised visits every Saturday. Text exchanges kept short and only about the baby. No late-night apologies. No, "I miss you." No attempts at small talk. I used a co-parenting app the mediator recommended, Our Family Wizard, so every message was logged. If Jerry wanted to say something about formula brands or diaper sizes, it went in the app. If he slipped and tried to talk about us, I ignored it. The first time he wrote, "Can we talk outside of this app?" I replied with one line, "No, this is the boundary." He didn't ask again. Meanwhile, he kept stacking up proof of effort. Therapy notes uploaded weekly. Attendance at parenting classes. Photos from support groups. I could tell he wanted me to notice. But I'd stopped giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, my focus was on survival. My C-section scar still throbbed some nights. My hair was falling out in clumps, postpartum hormones raging. On the worst days, I lay in bed while Amanda rocked the baby, whispering, "It's okay, you don't have to do this alone." Linda became the steady presence I never expected. She stocked my fridge, sat with me during feedings, and never once mentioned her son's absence in the delivery room. The unspoken truth hung between us. She was trying to fill the gap Jerry had left. One Saturday after a visit, the supervisor approached me. "Megan, I have to say, Jerry's showing consistent progress. He's attentive, he follows instructions, and he's clearly bonded with the baby." I nodded, but my jaw tightened. Good. That's what he should be doing. Later in the car, I replayed those words. Bonded with the baby. The thought made me both relieved and furious. Relieved that my son had a father who wasn't completely absent. Furious that Jerry thought showing up twice a week and not calling pregnancy disgusting somehow made him a hero. Back home, I logged into the app and typed, "Please remember that visits remain supervised. I am not comfortable with any changes at this time." He read it within a minute. No reply. For the first time in months, I exhaled. Boundaries were holding and I wasn't about to let them slip. By 4 months, my son was laughing, Real belly giggles that cracked through the exhaustion like sunlight. He loved peekaboo, hated tummy time, and had started recognizing faces, which made visits trickier. The first Saturday he fussed when I handed him to Jerry. I saw the panic flash across Jerry's face. "He doesn't want me," he muttered. The supervisor reassured him. "Babies this age often cling to their primary caregiver. Keep trying." Jerry did, awkwardly at first, but eventually my son settled. Still, I could see the fear behind Jerry's eyes, that he'd missed so much already, and he couldn't get it back. 2 weeks later, I got a notification in the co-parenting app. A formal request, transition to unsupervised visits. My stomach dropped. I read his message 3 times. "I've been consistent for 3 months. I'm in therapy. I'm sober. I've never missed a session. Please trust me enough to be alone with my son." I sat there staring at the screen while my son babbled in his bouncer. Trust. The word felt foreign, almost laughable. That night, I called Linda. "He wants unsupervised visits." Silence on the line, then a sigh. "He's working on himself, Megan. I see it. But if you're not ready, don't let anyone pressure you, not even me." The next mediation session was tense. Jerry leaned forward, eyes pleading. "I've done everything you asked, everything the court asked. When will it ever be enough?" I kept my voice calm. "When my gut stops telling me you're dangerous. And right now, it hasn't." The mediator stepped in. "Megan, is there any middle ground you'd consider?" I thought for a moment. "Yes. Extended supervised visits. 2 hours instead of 1. If he shows consistency for another 3 months, then we'll revisit unsupervised." Jerry's jaw clenched. "That's not fair." "It's not about fair," I said coldly. "It's about safe." The agreement was updated. Jerry got more time, but still with a supervisor in the room. As we left, he muttered under his breath, "You'll never forgive me, will you?" I strapped my son into his car seat without looking at him. "Forgiveness isn't the goal, Jerry. Protecting him is." And for the first time, he didn't argue. The first 2-hour visit felt like forever. I sat in the corner of the room, sipping cold coffee, watching Jerry on the floor with our son. He stacked soft blocks, made silly faces, tried to coax giggles. And to my surprise, the baby actually responded. For a moment, I caught myself staring, not at Jerry as my ex, not as the man who abandoned me in a hospital bed, but simply as another adult learning how to parent. It was jarring. The supervisor took notes like always, but I noticed fewer corrections. Jerry didn't need reminders to support the baby's head or check the bottle temperature. He was learning. Still, I refused to relax. At home, Linda and Amanda reminded me gently, "He's showing up." That counts for something. But I shook my head every time. Consistency is the baseline. It doesn't erase what he did. Weeks passed. The 2-hour visits became routine. Jerry showed up early, stayed focused, and even started bringing a diaper bag stocked with wipes, formula, and spare clothes, like he'd finally understood preparation mattered. One Saturday, the baby was teething, screaming inconsolably. Jerry paced, bounced, tried every trick. His shirt was soaked with drool and spit up, his face flushed. For a moment, I expected him to snap, to hurl an insult, to storm out the way he had so many times with me, but he didn't. He just kept rocking, whispering, "It's okay, buddy. I've got you." The baby eventually quieted against his chest. And I'll admit it, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not trust. But maybe the faintest sliver of possibility. Later, the supervisor pulled me aside. "Megan, I think it's important to note, he stayed calm under stress. That's a big milestone." I nodded stiffly. Duly noted. That night, as I nursed my sore gums baby at home, Amanda asked, "Do you think you'll ever let him have him alone?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked down at the tiny face pressed against me, the soft rise and fall of his chest. Finally, I whispered, if I ever do, it won't be for Jerry. It'll be for him. Because every child deserves a safe father, and I'm still deciding if Jerry can ever be that. If this story hit you, don't just scroll away. Smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Let's get this conversation louder.